Podcast Network.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Whining About Herstory, the podcast where two longtime gal pals swap stories about badass women you've probably never heard of, and we certainly had never heard of until now, over a bottle of wine. I'm Emily.
I'm Kelley.
And we're so happy you're listening today.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
So, we got some recent feedback from one of our listeners where they had just realized that both Kelley and I are telling each other these stories for the first time.
Yeah, most weeks, this week I asked Emily who her person was. I didn't ask for details, just the name to ensure that we weren't doing the same person. But most weeks there's no conversation about who we're doing until we arrive in the studio together.
So I just want to assure you, when I'm going, oh, fuck, oh my God, like, yeah. It's real.
Our reactions are 100% genuine, we promise.
We're genuinely just this campy and terrible.
Yeah, but I love you.
Yep. So, let's get started. First of all, we're going to introduce the wine we're drinking. Now, if you're a first-time listener, Kelley and I are not professional winers. We're more wine enthusiasts, amateur wine queens.
Yeah, that's accurate.
So we basically pick the bottles off of the cheapness and the label and the type of wine and just kind of whatever we're feeling like. This week was my turn, and I picked Lake Girl brand Pontoon Red California red wine. And I picked it because it's got this cute girl sitting on the beach, enjoying the water, just hanging out. And that's exactly where I want to be right now.
Right.
But in Minnesota, it is still way too goddamn cold.
Yeah, and today is kind of terrible and like foggy.
It's gloomy, it's foggy. Like, this would be great if it was Halloween.
Right.
You know? It's definitely that kind of ominous weather. So I'm just going to read the back of the label here. And normally this describes the wine. This bottle does not describe the wine at fucking all. So I'm just going to prepare you. So Lake Girl 2014 Pontoon Red. Listening to the lapping of the waves against the shore and seeing the moon reflected on the water, I'm transported to the moment of my first kiss. I know I'm home when I'm at the lake. Forever, Lake Girl.
Oh.
That's a very sexy wine label.
Yeah, I really like that.
It's funny because the front of the bottle looks kind of, I mean, the girl's definitely kind of sexy, but it's like more cute to me.
Well, and she looks kind of like shy, like, you know, she's like not actually touching the water at all, but she's kind of like, oh, hee hee.
Yeah, definitely like girl next door.
Yeah.
All right, I'm drinking out of the unpugged wine glass today.
I'm drinking out of bed pugs because I was in bed until Emily showed up.
And I have had a hell of a week, so I'm feeling very unhinged, and I'm ready to unplug from the grid of my week and just dive into this red.
Well, here we go.
Cheers to... Where are we cheersing to?
A better weekend than the week.
Cheers to a bitchin' weekend. Clink. So... Kelley, this isn't the first sip she's taken. I wish we had done it on recording because it kicked her in the fucking teeth.
I know. I took a sip and I was like, woo! It has a lot more flavor, especially than the wine we did last week, which was like super mellow, almost no flavor.
Yeah.
And this is very pungent is not the right word because that more describes a smell to me, but like...
Full-bodied.
Yeah. There's a lot of tannins, I'm sure.
And it took its whole body and just body slammed you in the face.
It's good, though.
Yeah, I like it. I definitely am kind of craving like a steak or a burger.
Right.
Just like all bloody and gross and primal.
Good red meat wine.
Yes. All right. So I get to start this week, and if you've listened before, I hate starting because there's so much anxiety associated with it. I want to do a good enough job where people stick around for Kelley's story.
Yeah. You know, or they could just skip and go to mine.
I'm
kidding, don't do that.
Like, skip to the next 30-minute mark. Oh, actually, I'm so sorry. Before we get started, we want to give a quick honorary shout out. So on the day of the recording, it is Hedwig Kohn's 132nd birthday. And she was a physicist who escaped the Nazis And I was just going to read this short article that kind of details her life, but the more I was reading it, the more I was like, fuck, I want to cover her. Because I'd never heard of her until the Google Doodle. So, honorary shout out, Hedwig Kohn, it's your 132nd birthday. Keep rocking on in heaven or wherever.
I know, I was like, wait, is she still alive?
Well, she's also Jewish. And I can't remember if... Is there a heaven? I should know this. I was in the Jewish student organization. I know there's not a hell.
I don't know.
We both went to college.
We're both drinking wine.
We're both drinking wine, but we did go to college.
And we're not trying to be offensive. We genuinely, like, don't know.
Yeah, I realize I overstepped by saying keep rocking it in heaven, and then realized that could be very religiously insensitive. So, you know what? I'm just going to power through it, keep rocking on Hedwig, and I'm going to jump into my story. All right, so today I am covering Elizabeth Jennings Graham, African-American teacher and civil rights figure.
Ooh.
Yes, I'm excited. And this is actually the second gal my mom has sent me.
Okay.
So shout out Gwen, I love you. She's very supportive. So right away I found differing accounts on details of her life. So some of my notes have question marks next to them. Like I found accounts that said she was born in March, and then others that said we don't know when the fuck she was born.
Yeah, sometimes you really get that they're like, oh, you were born this year, and then the other one's like, oh, they were born this year, which is like 2 years later, and you're like, okay, that's actually like a decent like time gap there, guys.
Well, and we've covered women before where their tombstones have been proven to be incorrect. Like,
right.
Oh, hey, according to census records and birth records and a ton of other paperwork, they were actually born in this year, but their tombstone just said, fuck it.
Fuck it, we're just picking a year.
Yeah, just throw a dart at a board of numbers, and that's just going to be the year.
Just guess the decade and then throw the dart.
All right. So Elizabeth was born in maybe March of 1827-ish. Dates differ according to her death certificate and census records. She was born as a free African American 38 years before the ratification of the 13th Amendment, which formally ended the legal institution of slavery in the United States.
Okay.
So being born free was a pretty big deal.
Did she live in the North?
She did. She was one of 5 children. Her father, Thomas L. Jennings, was a free man when Elizabeth was born and became a successful tailor and influential member of New York's Black community.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I went more into her parents than I normally do because they were both really fucking cool.
Yeah.
So her father received a patent for his dry cleaning process called dry scouring on March 3rd of 1821, which gave birth to modern-day dry cleaning. This also made him the first African-American to ever receive a patent.
That's awesome.
Right. So she's coming from some pretty incredible people.
She's got some high standards.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The bar is set and it is high. Her mother, also named Elizabeth, was born into slavery but later categorized as an indentured servant until 1827 under New York's Gradual Emancipation Act of 1799. So basically, this was a law that freed slave children born after July 7th, 1799, but made them indentured servants until they were young adults.
They still got, when they're indentured servants, do they get paid, or is it basically just another name for slaves?
It's basically another name for slave. So my understanding of indentured servitude is that you have a contract to basically work for someone for a set amount of time. It's like decades.
At least they knew it was ending. But it's still terrible.
No, and this is terrible. And I was thinking about it. I was like, well, I mean, I guess if I have to pick between being a slave for the rest of my life and having an end date on this bullshit, I'll pick that. But these kids are losing their entire childhoods. Oh, hey, you're a young adult.
You're not getting a childhood.
You don't get an education. You don't get a childhood. I mean, I don't know if anyone's teaching you how to fucking read.
And now you're on your own.
And now you're free and go fucking deal with that. So it's still not a great situation. And this pissed me off. I was like, I get baby steps, but this is just like people are patting themselves on the back thinking they're making progress and they're just doing fuck all. Thomas used the money he earned from his patented dry cleaning process to buy his wife's freedom.
Aww.
I couldn't find a year, so I don't know exactly how long she was a slave / indentured servant or when she was freed, but he was the first African-American with a patent, and he bought his wife's freedom, and they were able to have a daughter who was born free.
Which is awesome.
They are parenting to the max. Elizabeth Sr. was a prominent figure in her own right. She was a member of the Ladies' Literary Society of New York, founded in 1834 by New York's elite black women as an abolitionist organization and to promote self-improvement through community activities, reading, and discussion.
Yeah, I was going to say, so obviously she must have had some reading education at some point. And I think it was a lot of females tended to learn to read because they worked in the house, so I think they picked up more.
Yeah, and like I said, I was trying to find more about that timeline because I'm like, she's born into slavery and then indentured servitude, and she didn't even just kind of age out of the, like, her freedom was bought, so I'm like...
She still must have been a young woman.
Yeah. Elizabeth Sr. wrote the speech on the improvement of the mind, which her 10-year-old daughter Elizabeth, who we're covering, delivered at one of the group's meetings. The speech talks about the importance of exerting the power of the mind to improve the self and the world, particularly for African Americans to overcome the prejudices of whites and to work towards abolishing slavery.
Wow.
So this whole group is basically, hey, we need to work on ourselves. We need to become smarter, or not smarter, but we need to educate ourselves. We need to become stronger so that we can work to overcome the bullshit that we are facing.
Right,
in
and
society.
show them that, hey, we are equal to you.
Exactly, and to fight for that equality, because anyone who's ever cracked open a history book knows equality is not given.
Right.
It is fought for, even though everyone deserves it.
Yeah.
By 1854, Elizabeth Jennings Graham, so the daughter, who we're primarily covering, two Elizabeths made this a little complicated, became a school teacher and a church organist, teaching at the African Free School, an institution founded in 1787 to provide education to children of slaves and free people of color. One of the school's notable founders was Alexander Hamilton. We are waiting on the winds for you. Oh, God, I hope we don't get sued now.
I'm sure we'll be fine.
I'm a huge fan of Hamilton. That was like all I listened to for 3 months straight. In the 1850s, horse-drawn streetcars on rails were a common mode of transportation. These streetcar lines were privately owned, which allowed the owners and drivers to refuse service to passengers and to enforce segregated seating. Ugh. So, hey, this is our car. We can do whatever the fuck we want. On July 16th, 1854, Elizabeth was running late to play the organ at the First Colored Congregational Church. She boarded a streetcar owned by the 3rd Avenue Railroad Company, which only catered to white passengers, at the corner of Pearl Street and Chatham Street. Elizabeth was initially given permission to ride as long as none of the white passengers complained. Then, the conductor ordered her to get off. So, I found some weird accounts about this. Like, okay, she was allowed on, so she didn't, like, fight her way on.
Yeah.
But I found accounts that the conductor let her on as long as no one complained. But then he was just waiting to find someone to help kick her off.
Right.
Long story short, when Elizabeth politely told him to fuck off, the conductor tried to remove her by force. And only with the aid of a police officer was Elizabeth forcibly removed from the streetcar.
Oh, she's just trying to go to church, people.
You know what? This is the worst thing. You're living in the city. You're running late to play organ at the church. You catch a break getting a ride on this fucking streetcar, and then you get, like, forced off by two men.
Yeah.
Like...
Who probably were not gentle.
No, and there were records that, like, they ripped her clothes, they injured her. I couldn't find specifics, like, oh, she broke her fibula or anything. But she's literally getting forced off of this streetcar, and I'm like, well, did they even stop the streetcar? Did she do tuck and roll?
A tuck and roll, yeah.
So this should all sound very familiar to anyone who's even moderately familiar with the 1960s civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Shout out Rosa Parks. This shit has been going on for too fucking long.
Right.
Elizabeth later wrote of the incident, quote, I was a respectable person, born and raised in New York, did not know where he was born and that he was a good-for-nothing, impudent fellow for insulting decent persons while on their way to church. Because he was, like, accosting her and being like, where are you from? Where are you from?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like,
Here?
yeah, like, I'm going to church, asshole. Calm down. This naturally didn't set well with the Black community and sparked an organized movement to end racial discrimination on streetcars. The movement was led by Elizabeth's father, Reverend James W.C. Pennington, and Reverend Henry Highland Garnet. And I'm sure they're all really cool guys, but I did not get into them.
Yeah.
There were widespread protests against the streetcar company. Again, this is all sounding very familiar.
Yeah.
Elizabeth wrote a letter that detailed the incident and read it in church the very next day.
Oh, wow.
The letter was eventually published by famed abolitionist and escaped slave Frederick Douglass in his newspaper.
I know that name.
Yep. The story gained national attention, and Thomas filed a lawsuit on Elizabeth's behalf against the driver, conductor, and the Third Avenue Railroad Company.
Wow.
Elizabeth was represented by 24-year-old lawyer Chester A. Arthur, who might sound a little familiar because he eventually became our 21st president.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think when I covered my last gal, she had a run-in with a former president.
I believe so, yes.
Teddy Roosevelt. So I didn't do this on purpose. Maybe my mom did. At the time, New York didn't have any laws on segregation on streetcars. So this was a purely private policy of these streetcars. So in 1855, the court ruled in Elizabeth's favor, 100 years before Rosa Parks' famous ride.
Wow.
Brooklyn Circuit Court Judge William Rockwell said, quote, "Colored persons, if sober, well-behaved, and free from disease, had the same right as others and could neither be excluded by any rules of the company nor by force or violence." So it's like, hey, if you're not bothering anyone, it doesn't fucking matter what color your skin is.
Right.
Like, what a novel concept.
Right. If you're not, like, drunk and being an asshole or, like, super sick and gonna, like, get everybody else sick with, like, TB or some shit.
Right.
You're fine. Just get on the streetcar.
Right. We all got places to go. Chill the fuck out.
Sit down and shut up.
Oh my God. Park it and hush it. For our listeners with sensitive ears. Elizabeth was awarded damages in the amount of $250, which is just over $7,000 in today's money.
It's not bad.
It's nothing to sneeze at, but not great. I don't think she would have gotten $7,000 today if this had happened, but
yeah,
it's also super against the law to
right?
do this.
Yeah.
Because in this case, they just proved that there was no law to back up the streetcar company.
Right.
So, she was also awarded $22.50 in costs, which is $653.73 today. So she's making like $7,600 off of this horrible incident. While the ruling did not desegregate streetcars, Elizabeth's case set the precedent for future cases. African American activists formed the Legal Rights Association to continue fighting for equality. A similar case was brought forward in May of the same year by James W.C. Pennington, one of the men who had helped organize the movement originally, against another of New York's prominent streetcar companies. So this kind of started this movement towards addressing, hey, why is there segregation on streetcars? This is bullshit. Let's fucking fight it.
Right. And then they're like, no, there shouldn't be. And then they're like, well, look, they're still doing it.
Yeah. Well, and her winning set the precedent that, like, okay, legally,
they can't do this.
There's no reason to enforce this kind of bullshit. Yeah. It would be another decade in 1865 until New York's public transit services were completely desegregated. After the trial, Elizabeth continued working as an organist and teacher. She married Charles Graham in the 1850s, and the two had a son named Thomas in 1862. Unfortunately, Thomas died of convulsions, so I'm wondering, I think he might have had like seizures at 1 year old.
Oh.
Double sad, he died during the New York draft riots, which were riots that lasted for 4 days, sparked by the discontent amongst the working class and new laws passed by Congress to draft men to fight in the American Civil War. Didn't get deep into it. Elizabeth and her husband had to seek help from a white undertaker and sneak through the streets to bury their son.
I'm sure, because otherwise you're going to get caught in the riots. You're probably going to get arrested, even if you're not doing anything.
Right. I mean, it's just people are losing their shit and being very violent. And it's not like, I mean, your son has just died.
That's heartbreaking.
You can't wait. I mean, they didn't know. These riots lasted for 4 days. You can't wait to bury him.
No. And nor would you want to. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah. So that was just kind of sad. And then her husband died 4 years later in 1867. Oh. So I'm just hitting you with the sad.
Thanks.
In 1895, Elizabeth operated a kindergarten for African-American children out of her home at 247 West 41st Street. Shout out to 41st Street, because that's the street Kelley and I used to live on.
Heck yeah!
Not in New York or anything.
Minnesota.
In Minnesota. So that just made me smile. Like, whenever I can find little
connections,
kismet things like that, it makes me happy. Especially after, like, 3 hits of sad.
Yeah, you're like, yay, little ray of light.
She continued operating the school until her death on June 5th, 1901. So she really took it upon herself to take on kind of her parents' mission.
Yeah.
To help support and strengthen the Black community. And so she had the school running it out of her own home. She was a teacher for many years. Elizabeth was buried in Cypress Hills Cemetery in Brooklyn with her son and husband. And now I have what I titled Legacy in all caps. I had a lot of trouble finding information on Elizabeth, and it's probably because the first biography on her wasn't published until, do you have any guesses on the year?
61.
1961? Okay. 2018.
What? She wasn't written about until last year?
Yeah, so she did what Rosa Parks did 100 years before Rosa Parks, and I've never fucking heard of her.
No.
And I'm not bashing Rosa Parks here or anything. I'm just saying this woman is just as
there
incredible.
were other movements going on.
Written by Amy Hill Hirth, Streetcar to Justice, How Elizabeth Jennings Won the Right to Ride in New York, was intended for adolescent and adult readers. So it's more accessible that way, which I really like. Did not buy it, have not read it. I recommend you check it out. And let me know how it is. And if if it's worth the money. In 2019, Shirlane McRae, and I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, the First Lady of New York City, announced there would be a statue honoring Elizabeth erected near Grand Central Terminal. So she's still being remembered today.
Good. Finally.
And then I am ending on the cutest note ever.
Okay.
So I'm definitely trying to keep it upbeat this week. We have had some downer stories.
Yeah, thanks.
In 2007, New York City co-named a block of Park Row Elizabeth Jennings Place after a campaign by 3rd and 4th graders at PS 361. This had been attempted before in the 1990s but was not successful. One student said, quote, "She's an unknown hero that helped our state." Another said, "We actually took a stand in the world and for what we thought was right." I'm gonna cry.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Those little babies.
I wrote that quote down and I got really emotional, and like reading that was really hard. So
obviously people in New York remembered, because that was 2007. That's 11 years before a biography was written. So it must have been more prominent, in New York, or maybe the area she was from,
right?
Versus, in the United States, where, it should be remembered everywhere.
Right. And I get Rosa Parks being a more remembered figure because she's associated with Martin Luther King Jr. The civil rights movement of the 1960s was a lot more recent. This is one story that makes up a whole landscape of civil rights movements and activity.
Well, and this was pre-Civil War, because they were talking about the draft riots.
Yeah.
So this was pre/into the Civil War, whereas Rosa Parks was after.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it, too, is, the amendment hadn't been passed yet, and then it was, and so suddenly you have a much larger minority vying for this attention versus little pockets of the minority,
Yeah. Well, and even Elizabeth's parents were very focused on strengthening the Black community so that they could mobilize and fight for their rights. And I know progress is so painfully slow, and the real tragedy is that not everyone makes it to see it turn out, but it eventually does. And I feel like Elizabeth's story is just as much a part of Rosa Parks' story and every other civil rights story you hear, because it took every single act, it took every single movement, it took every single person for people to get the rights that they fucking deserve. And I will salute to Miss Elizabeth. Cheers. But that story just really touched me.
I was drinking wine. Yes, that was a good story. So, in another weird twist of events that seem to tie our episodes together, even though we don't talk about them beforehand, I am also covering an African American.
Seriously, we don't coordinate. We don't pick themes or anything. And I feel like a lot of our episodes have had that, oh my God, my lady too.
Yeah, right.
Kind of thing.
It was just, we have ESP.
This is what happens when you're friends with someone for 10 fucking years.
Yeah, right. All right. So I'm covering Katherine Johnson.
I have never
I was like, have you heard of it? Because it's like a super common name.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds like the fake name I would give at the bar. Oh, my name is Katherine. What's your last name? Johnson.
It's that or Smith.
Did I tell you that my friends and I, this guy asked us for our names and we all gave fake names, and me and my one friends were both realistic, and then my other friend's like, my name's Betty, and I'm like, who the fuck is named Betty?
It's okay. I have a stark remembrance of one time in college. I was sitting with you and some guy came up to you and was like, oh, I'm in your class. What's your name? And you're like, Kelley? And I was like, the fuck, Emily?
I don't remember that.
Maybe it was Cameo, actually.
Oh my God.
I don't remember, but it was either you or Cameo and someone did that, and I was sitting right next to them and I'm like, great, now I have to come up with a name, so I used their name.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so.
The lengths we go to get people to leave us the fuck alone.
Right, it's like, I don't want to give you my name. Okay, so Katherine Johnson was born Katherine Coleman in 1918 in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. To Joy Letta and Joshua Coleman, she was the youngest of 4 children. Her mother was a teacher, and her father was a lumberman, farmer, handyman, and worked at the Greenbrier Hotel. So her father was kind of a jack of all trades.
Yeah, he was out there working, getting it done.
Right? Katherine showed a strong math. I am so sorry if you can hear that.
The pugs are very excited about this story.
Yeah, they just want to know.
They're freaking out. They're in the peanut gallery. Go, Mom!
So Katherine showed strong mathematical abilities from an early age. Because Greenbrier County did not offer public schooling for African American students past the 8th grade, the Colemans arranged for their children to attend high school in Institute, West Virginia. The school that they went to was on the campus of West Virginia State College, which is now West Virginia State University. And Katherine was enrolled when she was only 10 years old.
Wait, she was going to high school?
Yes.
When she was 10?
Yes.
Holy shit.
Yeah, she was...
For math?
She was advanced.
So, I'm bad at math. And so anyone who's, even average at math, I'm like, so... How much?
You're good at math.
You sold your soul to the devil, didn't you, to do that basic addition, right? That's the only way this could happen. And she's 10 years old, going to high school.
Or high school, yes. So the family split their time between Institute and Sulphur Springs, school year versus summer. So they'd travel back and forth. I didn't look up how far it was, but I mean, they're in the same state, so it can't be too far.
Was she okay, so they had a home in Institute?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they'd stay there during the school years and then go back to White Sulphur Springs for the summer.
I'm like, was it a boarding school or was that one hell of a commute?
Nope, the family just all went together.
What do you mean the school bus doesn't come all the way out here?
Right. And I mean, she was the youngest of 4 children, so I'm assuming her older siblings were also in high school. Maybe. I don't know.
That's great that
I didn't
they
look that up.
Did all of the kids go to high school then?
I didn't look it up.
Okay. We're
not
going to worry about it.
It didn't mention it.
This isn't their story.
So Katherine graduated from high school at 14 and entered West Virginia State, a historically black college. As a student, she took every math course offered by the college, and multiple professors mentored her, including chemist and mathematician Angie Turner King, who also mentored Katherine throughout high school, and W.W. Schieffelin Clater, the 3rd African-American to have ever received a PhD in math.
Oh my God.
So those were her tutors.
She's being held up by legends.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
So Clater, the 3rd PhD receiver, actually went and added new math courses just for her.
Oh my
Because she was that
God.
advanced.
We need to make new math for you because you are blowing our minds.
Right? She graduated summa cum laude, or however you pronounce that.
I think it's summa cum laude.
And in 1937 with degrees in mathematics and French at the age of 18.
Was she just like, oh, I need to break up all this math. I'm going to learn some French.
Yeah. And so she graduated at 18 when most people are just starting college.
Yeah. Oh my fucking...
Right?
Okay, I don't care, like, if this happened today. This is insane. But especially for back then with all of the barriers in her way.
Yeah.
Like, because she wasn't even supposed to be able to go to high school, for God's sake.
Yeah, right. Like, her family was like, no, we're going to give you this opportunity and move to a different city so you can do this. So she was later handpicked to be one of 3 black students to integrate into West Virginia's graduate school. And most people would consider that their life's most notable moment. Mm-hmm. But it's just one of several breakthroughs that marks Katherine's long and remarkable life.
She's just fucking getting started.
Right?
Bring it on.
Her being handpicked happened when the court ruled that states that provided public higher education to white students also had to provide the same education to black students. This could be satisfied by either establishing black colleges and universities on their own or by admitting black students to previously white-only universities. So states kind of had their choice.
Okay. As long as everyone was getting the same level of education.
Yep.
But I mean, this whole separate but equal thing, we know how that shit plays out.
West Virginia decided to quietly integrate its graduate students in 1939. West Virginia State President Dr. John W. Davis selected Katherine and 2 male students as the first black students to be offered spots at the state's flagship school, West Virginia University. Katherine left her teaching job that she had. Did I mention that? She went on to teach?
Oh, no.
Sorry, I must have skipped that note. So after she graduated at 18, she went on to teach in Marion, Virginia, at a black public school.
What the actual fuck?
Sorry, I must have skipped that line. So this is a few years after that. So she's been teaching for a few years, and now they're...
Oh, I've got some work experience under my belt. I'm going to go break the barriers of
college. She was selected. She was one of 3. So she left her teaching job and enrolled in the graduate math program, obviously. It's either that or French,
Wait, you mean she wasn't a creative writing major?
No, it's a useless major.
Oh my God, shots fired.
I'm kidding.
I mean, I do have a podcast.
So at the end of the first session, however, she decided to leave school after becoming pregnant and choosing to focus on her family instead.
Valid choice.
She was married at the time. I forgot to mention that. Actually, it wasn't in my notes, but she did get married.
Can I side note? Can I get up on my little soap Bechtel box here? Yeah.
I mean, not that it matters that she was married. Sorry, I should say that.
Yeah, no, you're right. It totally
doesn't. But she was.
Yep. But I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions about feminism, that it's about women just abandoning the home, hating men, burning their bras, and going to turn the patriarchy into a matriarchy where women rule. And it's not about that. The core of feminism is choice.
Right.
If you want to be a stay-at-home mom, if you want to be a homemaker, that is a fucking valid choice.
Right. If men can choose that, women should be able to freely choose that too.
And men should be able to choose that too, because they're expected to be out working.
Yeah.
They can stay at home too. These are all necessary functions we need in our lives, and it doesn't matter if you're a man, a woman, non-binary, gender, it doesn't fucking
whatever
matter.
You are, you should be able to do whatever you want.
Exactly. So I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
It's a pet peeve I have about the view
and
on
I agree.
feminism.
And I mean, there are some extreme feminists that are that way, that are burn the bra, let's make, the men suffer if we've suffered. There are some of those women, and unfortunately, sometimes they're heard the loudest because they're the most controversial. But the core of feminism and the main movement is not that.
Right. I wouldn't even call those people feminists.
No, but they call them,
Yeah. But yeah, it's all about choice. So if you want to go out there and work and focus on your career instead of family, valid choice. If you want
to... And she was like, no,
if
I
you
want to go home.
Yeah, if you want to take some time to focus on your family, if that's all you want to focus on, dude, fucking get it, girl.
Right.
We love you and we support you, whoever you are. Whoever needs to hear this, we love you.
We love you. But not in a creepy way.
No, totally not creepy.
So she left after the first session. She eventually did return to teaching so she had 3 daughters over the time period, and then once they got a little older, then she went back to teaching.
Okay.
So
My mom did that.
She stayed a stay-at-home mom for a little while.
My mom did that. She was working at a library and then took some time off when I was born.
Yeah.
And then she went back and she was a preschool teacher. She was a substitute teacher because then she was on my schedule.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, valid choices.
So she stayed a teacher until about 1952, and that was when a relative told her about open positions at an all-black West Area computing section at the National Advisory Committee of Aeronautics, so NACA.
What is that? So
it's the predecessor to NASA.
Oh, okay. So there's an opening at pre-NASA.
Pre-NASA.
Baby NASA.
Yep, and it was an all-black section.
In the 1950s, pre-NASA had
it was all black West Area computing section.
That's crazy
so
to
they
me.
just had a section that was for black people.
Wow.
Yep. So this was in Langley. It was a laboratory in Langley, and it was headed by fellow West Virginian Dorotha Vaughan, who I also believe was black. I didn't look her up, but I think I read somewhere that she was also black.
Maybe we'll tell her story sometime.
Yeah. Katherine and her husband, James Goebel, there we go. We got to the husband finally. Decided to move the family to Newport News to pursue this opportunity, and Katherine began working at Langley in the summer of 1953. I did read that she had applied previously, that she had actually applied in 1952, but all the spots had been taken, so she applied again the next year and then actually got in.
Okay. I'm like, wait, they don't want someone who graduated from college at 18.
No,
and
it was just they were
teaching.
like, oh, we don't have any spots left. Sorry.
Yeah.
According to an oral history archived by the National Visionary Leadership Project, that states, at first, she worked in a pool of women performing math calculations. Katherine has referred to the women in the pool as virtual computers who wore skirts.
Oh my God.
Their main job was to read the data from the black boxes of plane and carry out other precise mathematical tasks. Then one day, Katherine and a colleague were temporarily assigned to help the all-male flight research team. Katherine's knowledge of analytic geometry helped make quick allies of male bosses and colleagues to the extent that, quote, they forgot to return me to the pool, end quote.
Oh my God.
I know.
You're ours now. You're with us.
Yep.
We need you.
While the racial and gender barriers were always there, Katherine says she ignored them. Katherine was assertive, asking to be included in editorial meetings where no woman had gone before, and she simply told people that she had done the work and that she belonged.
Good for her. And just the confidence to have that sense of authority and like,
right.
No, I fucking deserve to be here is something I would kill for.
Right.
Because I'm so like meek, especially a professional setting. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever you say, like no big deal. And that's something I'm trying to work on. But she's in there and she's like,
no, I belong here just as much as you.
Yeah, tell me I don't. I dare you. Bring it on.
So to kind of backtrack a little, because that was all a quote. So she worked as the computer from 1953 to 1958.
I hope that was on her resume.
I know, right?
Computer
who wore a skirt.
Can you tell me more about this?
Right. So then she was reassigned to the male group, which was called the Guidance and Control Division of Langley's Flight Research Division. So staffed by white male engineers. And in keeping with state racial segregation laws and federal workplace segregation introduced under President Woodrow Wilson in the early 20th century, Katherine and the other African Americans and women in the computing pool were required to work, eat, and use restrooms that were separate from those of their white peers.
Bullshit.
Their office was also labeled as the colored computers. Yeah.
You know, if it wasn't racially charged, that sounds like kind of a neat name.
Right.
But it's obviously inappropriate, and that sucks.
In an interview with WHRO TV, Johnson stated that, quote, she didn't feel segregation at NASA because everybody there was doing research. You had a mission and you worked on it, and it was important to you to do your job and play bridge at lunch. I just like that the end of the sentence is, and play bridge at lunch.
In French.
Right.
Girls gotta have a recreation.
She added, I didn't feel any segregation. I knew it was there, but I just didn't feel it.
Well, because she's like, I'm doing my work. I don't know what the fuck y'all are doing.
So I guess, the NACA disbanded the colored computing pool in 1958 when it was superseded by NASA. So maybe it was absorbed into NASA. I don't really know.
NASA
NASA might have been its own thing and took them over.
Yeah.
Either way, she ended up at NASA.
She was like a budlet of what was to be NASA.
Right. So NASA had adopted digital computers by this point, which is why they didn't need people hand doing their calculations. And although the installation of the desegregation forms of discrimination were still pervasive, and Katherine recalled this saying, quote, "We needed to be assertive as women in those days, assertive and aggressive, and the degree to which we had to be that way depended on where you were. I had to be in the early days of NASA. Women were not allowed to put their names on the reports. No woman in my division had her name on any report. I was working with Ted Skopinski, and he wanted to leave and go to Houston, but Henry Pearson, our supervisor, he was not a fan of women, kept pushing him to finish the report we were working on. Finally, Ted told him, Katherine should finish the report. She's done most of the work anyways. So Ted left Pearson with no choice. I finished the report and my name went on it, and that was the first time a woman in our division had her name on something."
That is insane because, a lot of the women we cover have been either forgotten or intentionally erased by history. Right. These women not being able to take credit for all of their work. I mean, no wonder they're fucking hidden figures because we don't even have the paperwork.
Speaking of that, it'll come later in my story, but she was actually in a book and then a film called Hidden Figures.
Was it the most recent Hidden Figures?
I think so.
Oh my God, I feel really dumb right now. I should have recognized her name because that movie was a really big deal.
Yes. I don't know. I'll get to it later and it says the year.
I'm skipping ahead. I'm sorry.
So in 1956, James Goebel, her husband, died due to an inoperable brain tumor.
Oh,
so sad.
Yeah.
However, in 1957, Katherine Johnson's life changed, and at that same time, the Soviets just happened to launch the Sputnik satellite.
Oh, snap. It's getting real.
Yep. So, in 1957, Katherine provided some of the math for the 1958 document, Notes on Space Technology, a compendium of series of 1958 lectures given by engineers in the Flight Research Division and the pilotless Aircraft Research Division.
And take a deep
breath. That was the entire name.
That's how you get your word count.
Right? Engineers from those groups formed the core of the Space Task Group, which was the NACA's or NASA's first foray into space. And Katherine, who had worked with many of them since coming to Langley, came along with the program. Literally, that was in quotes, just came along with the program.
She's a part of the package. You need her.
So then it says, as the NACA became NASA. So, yeah.
Okay.
She did trajectory analysis for Alan Shepard's May 1961 mission on Freedom 7. So I think that was the first American in space. I think. I recognize the name.
This is a herstory podcast.
Sorry.
We don't care about the his. No, I'm kidding.
It says America's first human space flight.
Oh my God, I should have waited.
I should have waited, yeah. In 1960, she and engineer Ted Skopinski co-authored, so this is the name of their paper that we talked about in her quote, Determination of the azimuth angle of burnout for placing a satellite over a selected Earth position.
Is it Asimov? No.
Azimuth. So it could be Azimuth. Sure. Azimuth angle.
All words are made up, and we can pronounce them however we want.
One glass of wine and without dinner. Don't question me.
We had to start recording a little early. Normally, Kelley and I are kind of like more relaxed, and we've had our first glass of wine, but due to scheduling issues, we're just pounding it down and getting the shit done.
Fuck yeah. All right. So this was a report laying out the equations describing an orbital space flight in which the landing position of the spacecraft was specified. Because if you didn't know this, originally when they launched things into space, they just kind of let them land wherever. And they were like, oh, we'll just go and recover them. I mean, they usually tried to get them in the ocean, but...
Yeah. Well, we know it's going to be in this, somewhere in the Pacific. Right. Just this whole general blue area on the map. We'll figure it out.
So her and then Ted Skopinski wrote a report on these equations to try and get them to land in specific areas.
I totally thought you were going to say Ted Kaczynski for a second, and I'm like...
That's probably why I, fucked that up.
Whoa, what? I didn't know the Unabomber was a part of this.
I don't even know if he was alive yet.
I don't think so.
Right? So as we mentioned, it was the first time a woman in the Flight Research Division had received credit as an author of a research report. During this time, she also plotted backup navigation charts for the astronauts to take with them in case of electronic failures.
So
That's
she's
pretty
helping
sweet.
keep them safe.
Yep. So jumping ahead to 1962, as NASA prepared for the orbital mission of John Glenn, Katherine was called upon to do work that she would become most known for.
So this is her peak. This
Yes.
is it. This is what all of her badassery is leading
Right.
up to.
So, the complexity of the orbital flight had required the construction of a worldwide communications network, linking tracking stations around the world to IBM computers in Washington, D.C., Cape Canaveral, and Bermuda.
Did she create the internet?
No.
Is that what this is?
Just listen.
Okay.
The computers had been programmed with the orbital equations that would control the trajectory of the capsule in Glenn's Friendship 7 mission, from blastoff to splashdown. See? Oceans.
Okay.
But the astronauts were wary of putting their lives in the care of the electronic calculating machines, which were prone to hiccups and blackouts.
Because computers are terrible.
As part of the pre-flight checklist, Glenn asked the engineers to, quote, get the girl. Katherine, he wanted her to run the same numbers through the same equations that had been programmed into the computer, but do it by hand on her desktop mechanical calculating machine. This is a quote from John Glenn. If she says they're good, we're good.
I love that he's like, fuck the computers, get me Katherine, because she is the only one I can trust to get this shit right.
Yeah, it says Katherine Johnson remembers the astronaut saying, then I'm ready to go. Like, if she calculates it to be the same.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Like, can you imagine someone today being like, hey, I did this on my cell phone calculator, but can you do it on some paper by hand? Because I want to make sure it's right. You do, like, that's completely inconceivable.
This is insane. This is so biography.com states that these calculations were, quote, far more difficult calculations to account for the gravitational pulls of celestial bodies, end quote. Author Margaret Lee Shelterly, who's the person that wrote Hidden Figures, stated, so the astronaut who became a hero looked to this black woman in the still segregated South at the time as one of the key parts of making sure his mission would be a success. She added that in a time where computing was women's work and engineering was left to the men, it really does have to do with us over the course of time, sort of not valuing that work that was done by women, however necessary, as much as we might, and it has taken history to get the perspective on that.
You know what I love is that math and STEM is very much seen as the realm of men.
Right. And there are a lot of people though that are like, we need more women in STEM.
I mean, we do. Here's the thing. We need to encourage women to pursue STEM if they're interested, and we need to allow those opportunities.
Yeah. And the thing is, we need to encourage men to be able to go into whatever field they want as well.
Exactly.
Like, they don't have to go into math or science or
business,
if they don't want to. If they want to be an artist or a theater major, let them.
Go for it, dude. But I love this idea that calculation was quote-unquote women's work.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Since when?
I know. That's insane. So, in case you didn't know, John Glenn's flight was a success.
Oh, thank God.
And it marked a huge turning point in the competition between the United States and the Soviet Union in the space race. When someone asked her to name her greatest contribution to the space exploration, Katherine talks about the calculations that helped cinch the Project Apollo's lunar landing. So not only did she, make sure John Glenn went into space, she also actually helped with landing on the moon.
Oh my God. So we wouldn't have gotten into space. I mean, okay, I get a lot of people were working on
Yeah, and
this.
it wasn't just her, but she was kind of one of the forerunners.
Yeah, but she was also completely erased.
Yeah.
Almost completely.
Almost.
They tried.
So she helped with the calculations that helped sync Project Apollo's lunar lander with the Moon Orbiting Command and Service module. She also worked on the Space Shuttle and the Earth Resources Satellite and authored or co-authored 26 more research papers.
Good God.
She retired in 1986 after 33 years working at Langley for NASA. She said, I loved going to work every single day.
See, that would be such stressful work for me because you get one number wrong and that dude's fucking dead.
Yeah.
The astronauts are all, it doesn't turn out well. But I mean, it seemed like she had this natural ability, and then she worked really hard at it. And she definitely loved it. That's incredible.
So we are now into my legacy portion.
Legacy.
So in 2015, at the age of 97, Katherine added another extraordinary achievement to her long list. President Obama awarded her the Presidential Medal of Freedom America's highest civilian honor.
Oh,
there's actually a really cute picture of her with like the medal on, and like Obama's kissing her cheek.
Oh,
yeah,
Katherine.
It's like, oh, she's like this little old lady.
Well, and I love that she was, she's a black woman working with all of these men. They're trying to be like, no, you don't get to put your name on the paper. And she perseveres. And
I like that the one man was like, no, just fucking let her.
Yeah, no. And I mean, that's great that she had people around her that could respect, like, she's really good at this. What
but
the
she
fuck is
also,
wrong
she
with
also
you?
knew that she had to stand up for herself.
Exactly. But then she lived long enough to not only be recognized for that,
I think she's still alive.
But recognized to meet the first African-American president.
I know, that's amazing.
Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. These stories are gonna make me cry.
Here's other things. In 2016, a new 40,000 square foot building was named the Katherine G. Johnson Computational Research Facility and was formally dedicated at the agency's Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. The facility officially opened its doors on September 2017, and she was able to attend the event, which also marked the 55th anniversary of Alan Shepard's historic rocket launch and splashdown, a success Johnson helped achieve.
Aww.
I know. At the ceremony, Deputy Director Lewin said about Katherine, millions of people around the world watched Shepard's flight, but what they didn't know at the time was that the calculations that got him into space and safely home were done by today's guest of honor, Katherine Johnson. During the event, Johnson also received a Silver Snoopy Award, often called the Astronauts Award. NASA stated that it is given to those who have made outstanding contributions to flight safety and mission successes.
I'm so glad she's being recognized for all of this.
We're not done yet with her.
Oh my God, give it to me.
Achievements.
Give it to me.
So she has been portrayed in the media. The highly acclaimed film Hidden Figures, released in December 2016.
Okay, so this is the movie I was thinking of. I did not see it.
Was based on the nonfiction book of the same title by Margaret Lee Shetterly, which is the woman I quoted earlier.
Right.
Which was published the year earlier. So that was published in 2015. It follows Katherine and other female African-American mathematicians, Mary Jackson and Dorothy Vaughan. So see, she was black. I was like, I knew it said somewhere in there.
we
who
got
had worked
there.
at NASA. Taraji P. Henson plays Johnson in the film. Appearing alongside Henson at the 89th Academy Awards, Katherine received a standing ovation from the audience.
Was she the one who was actually at the award ceremony?
Yeah, she was like in a wheelchair.
Right. Yeah, I remember seeing that, and I couldn't
and
remember
I think it was
which
like,
of the women
I saw
it was.
a picture, and I think it was like her, Michelle Obama, I think the woman that played her, and then like two other like famous black women, and it was just like this very powerful photo.
Right.
I'll put it up on the blog. It was beautiful.
I'm gonna cry. This is all very touching.
I know. Katherine offered the following comment about the movie, quote, "It was well done. The three leading ladies did an excellent job portraying us." So that's pretty good.
I mean, if you get the thumbs up from the person you're pretending to be,
right?
That's pretty good.
There was also a 2016 episode of the NBC series Timeless titled Space Race, in which she was portrayed by Nadine Ellis.
So she's... You know what I think is interesting is as soon as you mentioned Hidden Figures, I was like, oh, okay, that sparked something in me. But without the book and the movie, I would have been like, who? What?
Right, exactly.
And now I'm catching up, and I'm real. Oh yeah, I saw that. I know who that is.
Yeah. So I have a few, just a few more things.
Go for it.
So the West Virginia State University announced plans for an endowed STEM scholarship in the honor of Katherine and a life-size statue of her on campus. On May 12th, 2018, she was awarded an honorary doctorate by the College of William and Mary, and that was one day before her 100th birthday.
Oh my God. How old
she attended. She turned 100 last year.
Oh my God.
I couldn't find anything saying she died, so I assume she's still alive and kicking.
I feel like I would have heard about it, so yeah.
Oh yeah, I hardcore was Googling, I was looking at NASA's website, everything. So I think she's still alive. About it. So yeah, there's this beautiful bronze sculpture of her, and this is what was said. What makes Katherine so extraordinary is she not only prevailed while segregation failed, Dr. Johnson has continued to persevere and thrive with the gracious poise and clarity that defies mere words of explanation, let alone definition. This was said by Yvonne Cagle, Life Science and Directorate at Johnson Space Center. She also said, quote, So what can you say after a century about someone like Dr. Katherine Coleman Goebel Johnson?
I mean, here's the thing. She deserves as many fucking names as she
Right.
wants. I'll tack on some for you.
Right? So it says,
people should lose their breath speaking your name.
so the full quote is, so what can you say about a century after Dr. Katherine Coleman Goebel Johnson? That is literally every last name she's had her whole life. Our very own global genius. Let's see. You say nothing. You don't say anything. You listen.
Oh, sit down. Shut the fuck up. Genius is speaking.
Yeah.
I love that.
So yeah, she turned 100 August of last year, 2018. And that's my story.
That's so beautiful. I didn't see the movie. Shame on me. But I'm really glad
I didn't even hear about it.
You didn't even hear about it?
I live under rocks.
Apparently. Okay.
And
why do
caves.
we live in a cave? When Kelley and I lived together, she always had the lights off and I was always turning them on. She was always turning them off. And there was this one time I literally just yelled, "Why do we live in a cave?"
Well, what would happen is, this was when we lived in Rochester, but I would get home before her. She worked later than I did.
Mm-hmm.
This might have been when I was working nights even. I don't remember. But what would happen is I would get home when it's still light out and I would start like playing a video game or watching TV. And I'm sure everyone's had that moment where you don't notice how dark it's gotten because you're just so focused. And then she would come in and yell at me and I'd be like, wow, it's really dark in here.
When did the sun set?
So that's what would happen. So that's our thing.
We lived in a cave.
Why do we live in a cave and
so angry?
Because those are our familial quotes.
We would always yell at each other in like the most loving ways possible. And then when we'd kind of peak, we'd just yell, "So angry."
It was beautiful.
It was. Yes. See, you can get mad at the women in your life and still love them.
Right. It's a beautiful, beautiful relationship.
Thank you for sharing that story, though, because like I said, I didn't see the movie. I struggle with those very deep emotional movies because I'm a crier, and I rarely have the energy to knowingly walk into a cry.
Right.
So it was really great to hear her story from you, and then to be, oh shit, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, to be like, oh, I have heard of this person, I just didn't realize it.
And I love the synergy we had, both talking about women of color
segregation,
who broke down barriers because they're like, fuck this shit.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, we ended on a pretty high note, but I'm going to keep the thankfulness going. So at the end of every episode, Kelley and I share something we're thankful for. These are
my least favorite part.
This is my favorite part, but it's particularly helpful when we have kind of downer stories.
Yes, I agree.
So, Kelley, would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
No. Yeah, no, you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. So, I'm not going to go into details. I have had a hell of a week, and I just kind of feel like dying. And I work with a life drawing class, and I modeled this last week, and I went in, and I didn't fucking want to be there because I'm like, I just want to go home, curl up in a ball, and will myself to die. I just like want to disappear. So I went in, and the whole group, they're all so welcoming and nice, and I started posing, and it's a very expressive work. And at the end of it, I felt so much better. It was very calming and peaceful. And everyone's like, wow, your poses were like really good and expressive. I'm like, well, you can thank all of the frustration and
you can thank my anger.
Yeah, you can thank my angst. So I'm really thankful for that group. I'm really thankful for that opportunity to get out and express myself and feel better. And for those people in that environment. So that really helped me get through my week without just imploding.
Yeah, that's good. You can't implode because we had the episode to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. I'm like, I can't just explode because I
not now. You can,
Kelley.
I mean, you have to be back like next week, but
I'll
you
just
can
like
explode
reform.
in the meantime, yeah, and then reform by the next episode.
Yeah, I'll just Avengers Infinity War now, and then Avengers Endgame, fingers crossed, by next week.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
Awesome.
I'm open about my mental health, but this week I'm gonna thank my therapist because I haven't seen him in a really long time. Partially because I was doing okay, partially because goddamn I work a lot and trying to like fit that in and still like work was not working out for my schedule for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was just, there's been a lot of different things going on in my life, and it was just really nice to actually like see him and sit down and like work through things, because some of it was just not even like him helping me, but it was just me being able to talk things out with someone.
It's huge.
It was great, and I left feeling that was the first psych appointment that I haven't cried at. And it's not that I like intentionally cry, it's just that I think like all my emotions come to the surface when I'm talking to him, because I'm just talking about, obviously what's going on in my life.
Mm-hmm.
That every single session except this last one, I have cried.
Well, and when you're in the moment of a very stressful time, you are so focused on getting it done. Like I've had phone calls this week where I'm like, I just want to cry, but I can't, because I gotta suck it up. I gotta focus, and I gotta get this shit done.
Yeah, so
and
I cry at my psych sessions.
Yeah, and it's not until later where you're really reflecting on an event where you're like, oh my God, I'm just gonna cry about it.
Yeah,
I'm giving myself permission to feel this.
But yeah,
to the full intensity.
It was like a big breath of air, and it was nice.
I'm really proud of you. Choosing to go back to therapy is a really big deal, and the fact that you're taking care of yourself and your mental health is something that everyone should applaud. Well,
and the fact that I could have easily not gone, because it's been like a month to a month and a half, and I could have easily just been like, meh, I'm not going to go back.
Exactly.
But I was like, no, I should go back. Oh, yeah, it definitely is, because I mean, the therapist I see is someone that a friend recommended to me that she had seen for similar problems. And she gave me his phone number, and it seriously, just due to fear and stuff, took me like 3 months to call him. Because I was so afraid of going back to therapy. Not like for any rational thing. It's just that I have anxiety, and my brain is like, terrible things are going to happen. Like he's going to tell you your whole life's a lie. Which, as someone who studied psychology, that's not what therapists do.
Right, but that's how powerful mental illness can be.
That's how anxiety works.
Well, and it's like, I struggle with anxiety too. I'm not trying to like blow up your spot or anything, just sharing.
My problems are just as valid as your problems, Emily.
Oh, and your problems are almost as valid as mine. No, I'm kidding. Your problems are just as valid as mine. But people will say, well, you're overreacting. That doesn't make sense. Oh, honey, I fucking know It doesn't make sense. That's the worst part about it, because I'm very self-aware that none of what I'm thinking or feeling makes any goddamn sense. And yet here it is. Yeah. And here I am, unable to move past it.
And that's literally what makes it anxiety versus just worrying about something. It's the fact that it's irrational. It is an irrational fear that you just cannot get over.
Right.
And I was talking to Justin about that once, about something, and he's just like, it sucks to know that no matter what I say and no matter how rational I am, he's like, I'm not going to be able to convince you to calm down because your brain isn't being rational. I'm like, trust me, I know.
Oh, yeah.
But it's nice to know that even though he doesn't struggle with it, he understands as much as he can.
Exactly. He's doing his best to be supportive of you. And it's great that you have people in your life who do support you. I mean, same for me. You support me.
I was going to say, we support each other.
Yeah.
So cheers and thanks to all of that.
Cheers. Clink. More wine.
So thank you all for joining our Femi family today.
This was such a cathartic episode.
It was. And we were glad you guys were here to share it with us.
Thank you. Please hit us up on Facebook, Whining About Herstory, Instagram, WAH Pod. Email us the women in your life that you want to celebrate, because we want to hear about them at whiningaboutherstory@gmail.com.
Right. Or wine recommendations, or just anecdotes, or even just like a hi, hey, I'm out here and I'm listening. Like, or if you want someone to talk to, I'll email you back. I have time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We love it.
And then check out our blog, whiningaboutherstory.com. I post a little synopsis every week, and I'm trying to do profiles, even though I totally missed my Virginia Woolf one. But
Virginia Woolf is a queen, and I love her.
There's just so much. There's so much there.
Oh, she is an incredible figure, and I did a lot of reading of hers and then papers when I was in college, to the point where a couple of birthdays ago, my friend gave me a postcard with her picture and then wrote on the back, like, to your past life lesbian lover.
Cute.
And I'm like, yeah, I kind of love Virginia Woolf.
But yeah, so check all those out,
We'd love to hear from you, and thank you so much for joining us today, and please have an empowered day.
Bye.
Bye.